Welcome back, everyone. This week's lecture is about how libraries are organized. We'll cover staffing, trustee roles, diversity, and some ideas related to performance reviews and job searches. So let's get started. Depending on individual libraries and how big they are and how many staff they have, here's an idea of how libraries are organized or how the organization chart might be set up. Public libraries have a board of trustees. Sometimes they call them a board of directors or a library commission maybe, but public libraries all have this board. Under the board is the library director. So the board acts as the boss of the director. They are the direct supervisor of the library director. So the library director is next. Under the library director, you might have department heads. Sometimes they're called coordinators or managers. And then below department heads is the frontline staff. My library has all of these positions: librarians, interns, reference assistants, clerks, pages, technology assistants, maintenance staff, and more. This is an even entire list. So again, my library, I would say, is a large medium. We're a class 5 Michigan library, so we are a large medium sized library. So we have all of these positions in our library. Very small libraries might just have a board, a director, and some frontline staff. They may rely more on volunteers for some of the work that larger libraries can afford to have staff members do. So this is very, different from library to library. The terms that are used to describe these positions and how many of these positions exist. I've put a link in the module to some job descriptions from the WebJunction page, just to give you an idea of what kinds of things different jobs in the library might do, or what kind of positions there might be. Trustees, or board members, are the top level of responsibility. They report directly to the taxpayers, so, the buck stops with them, so to speak. They are responsible for the library director, so they perform the director's performance reviews, and they're responsible for making sure the director does their job. Some other trustee duties include analyzing community needs, as I said, managing the director, advocacy for the library and its services, budget review and approval, policy review and approval, commitment to freedom of inquiry and expression, long-range planning, fundraising. Trustees are sometimes appointed and sometimes they're elected, depending on the type of library, the tax basis, and the organization of the library. Trustees represent the community, so it's preferred if they also represent the diversity of the community, so that all viewpoints and interests are represented in the library and the decisions that they make. There's a link in the module to a division of the American Library Association called United for Libraries. They have lots of resources for trustees. There's also a link to the Library of Michigan's information page. The Library of Michigan holds regular trustee training sessions so that new trustees can be properly introduced to their roles and their responsibilities. If you don't live in Michigan, take a look at your state library's website to see if they offer a similar training or a manual. One of our assignments this semester is to attend a library board meeting and write a reaction paper to the experience. In past semesters, students have appreciated the opportunity to experience the library in a different way and to sort of get a better understanding of what happens at the top where these big picture decisions are made. Here are some of the duties of library directors. They are leaders, managers, and visionaries. They set the library's priorities in coordination with the library board. They may be liaisons to community groups. My director attends Chamber of Commerce events, Downtown Development Authority, Rotary, and other meetings of community groups too. She creates community partners and communicates with these groups as to how the library can help fulfill community needs. The director in my library also manages department heads. She's my direct supervisor. Directors of small libraries may also do the work of librarians: collection development, programming, reference, or circulation, or really any job that needs doing. Directors of large libraries may focus solely on administrative duties. As a large, medium-sized library, my director has two-hour desk shifts per week. She works at the reader advisory desk for 2 hours on Monday mornings, and 2 hours at the reference desk on Tuesdays. So it's a nice way to keep her connected to the community, to practice those frontline librarian skills that she doesn't get to do as much anymore. And honestly, to get out of her office and do something fun for a few hours a week. She's always willing to help out at any desk when we're short-staffed, but the majority of her time, 36 of her 40 hours a week, are spent on administrative duties. She creates the budget that's approved by the library board for each fiscal year, and she works closely with the budget throughout the year too. She gets board approval to move money around from line to line of the budget whenever that's needed. She gets large bills approved for payment. She handles the bid process for large projects whenever that's required. And she communicates with the department heads about budgetary needs in our departments too. My director has a special knack for strategic planning. So in many libraries, the director works with a consultant or a committee that includes board members for strategic planning. My library does our own strategic planning with our director as sort of the committee chair. Trustees and staff at all levels of service are included in the committee, but she drives the process herself. She's just really good at it. Many directors work on grant writing and fundraising for the library too, or staff at other levels of service. Sometimes librarians or just other staff do grant writing and fundraising too. My director does some of the grant writing and the fundraising for our library as well. The list on the right side of the screen are some resources that I've linked in the module that are related to director jobs, hiring a library, job descriptions for libraries, and certification programs that the ALA APA has. My full-time day job is Adult Services Coordinator at a public library. My direct supervisor, as I said, is the library director, and I manage 6 adult services librarians and 2 interns. I'm responsible for hiring and training, assessment and performance reviews, project management, collection and programming budgets, scheduling, submitting hours to payroll, pretty much everything else that happens in the management of my department. When the adult services librarians need resources like time or help or space or money for a project they're working on, they come to me and I make those decisions on behalf of the department. I am in direct contact with the library director on a daily basis. We communicate often, and we have deep conversations about how the projects the librarians in my department are working on match the library's strategic objectives and priorities. The director tells me what she needs, and I communicate with my staff to make it happen. And look, we don't always agree, but I'm lucky enough to work for a director who listens and is willing to pivot when I feel strongly about something. We are able to talk things through, professionally and cordially. We get along super well. We can come to either a compromise or a consensus about why one of us is right and the other person will support the final decision. It's a beautiful thing. I know that's not the case in every library. I'm very fortunate to have the director that I do. So I communicate in both directions, which is why it's called middle management. I take information up the chain from the librarians to the director, and I take information down the chain from the director to the librarians. Honestly, it can be awkward to get caught in the middle when the librarians disagree with the director, since neither side has all of the information of the other. That's where I come in, to create more awareness of the other person's perspective. I understand the director's perspective because I have those deep conversations with her. I know I'm privy to information that maybe the librarians don't have. The director is a little more distant from the librarians, so she's not always as aware of everything they're working on or every daily work thing that the librarians are up against either. So I'm sort of the liaison between those two things. So thankfully I work in a very transparent and a very open environment where communication is valued by everyone.
Some of the activities that library staff do include supporting lifelong learning and basic literacy. We support education and job seekers and patrons doing research. We do collection development. We provide access to information in a variety of formats, and we provide learning and cultural opportunities for patrons through programming. It's important to point out that all staff support the library's mission. These are not necessarily librarian duties. All staff support lifelong learning. And I've given an example on the slide here by making materials available, which is what pages do, in places, which is the concern of the maintenance staff, formats, which is technology, that are accessible, which is what circulation does, to patrons. So we all support patron service in all of these ways.
I want to challenge everyone this week to see if your library, either where you work or where you live, has an organizational chart on their website. Is that chart rather flat or is it fairly deep? How many steps are there between entry level and administration? And are there opportunities to move around if up is not someone's goal? So I, for example, have no interest in being a library director. I'm at the middle management level, and that's the sweet spot for me. That's perfect for me. But I also work with librarians who love what they do and they have no interest in any kind of management whatsoever. But that doesn't mean they aren't ambitious. They want to have opportunities to move around and try new things, to be in charge of projects, if not people, budgets, committees, things like that. So we like to create opportunities for our staff to move around or up, whichever is their goal. We want people to be ambitious and be curious and try new things. It's really unfortunate if someone feels stagnant or stuck in their job, like there's nowhere to go. So sometimes those organizational charts give an idea of how it's possible to move around in an organization, whether up is their goal or not.
Just as it's important for the library board to represent the community that they serve, it's also important that there's diversity among the staff who serve those communities. However, the truth is, and I've linked to this website in the module, the Department for Professional Employees, did a study in 2020. They found that 83% of librarians identified as white in 2020. 19.6% of the librarian workforce was 55 years or older. 31.5% of the library workforce, that first one is librarian workforce. The second number there, 31.5% of the library workforce, so all library staff, were 55 or older in 2020. 83.2% of all librarians are women, and 82.2% of graduates from MLIS programs in 2018-2019 academic year were women. However, Black women accounted for only 4.5% of those MLIS graduates that year. Hispanic was 7.8%, and Asian Pacific Islander only 2.5%. These statistics show us how much work there is to be done in diversifying our profession. Clearly, there is a lot of work to do in the diversity efforts of our profession. There are some efforts, though, out there that are doing pretty, really wonderful things. The American Library Association offers the Spectrum Scholarship to people of diverse backgrounds. They also they do some recruiting for the profession for people of diverse backgrounds. There are scholarships and mentoring for people of color provided by almost all of the ethnic affiliate organizations within ALA. The Black Caucus, the Asian Pacific Library Association, all of them have scholarships, mentoring, recruiting efforts through their organizations within the ALA. There's also ODLOS, the Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, which also has a lot of programs in place to reach out and recruit people from diverse backgrounds into librarianship.
Since we're talking about staffing, here is some unsolicited career advice. I've done a lot of hiring over the years for staff at all levels of library service. And, I want to share with you what I have learned. If you're trying to get your foot in the door, you have to do some networking. Connect with professionals you admire on LinkedIn or social media. You can find fellow alumni, for example, or other members of the State Library Association. This is a good way to find a mentor if you don't have one. The Michigan Library Association has a mentoring of like a formal mentoring program that you can be a part of. Join a committee. The Library Network, TLN, is a library cooperative in Southeast Michigan, and they have discussion groups where you can meet other staff. Check out their Adult Services Committee, their Youth and Teen Committees, Marketing Interest Group. They have all kinds of them. There's nothing to join or apply to. You just show up and you will be welcome. Or go deeper and join a committee or work group of your state library association, or even the American Library Association. There's a lot of work to do to be done at higher levels of the industry. So get to know people and practice skills like group work and meeting facilitation. Visit libraries and introduce yourself to the staff. Now look, don't be annoying. Just say hi. Introduce yourself as a library science student. Ask a question or two about the library, like, what's an interesting collection here that I should check out? Or how many librarians are on staff here? Or, hey, do you have a newsletter I can see? Volunteer, help with a program, help with a weeding project, stuff envelopes, help with an outreach booth. Make yourself available and expect to do some dirty work while they get to know you and to trust you. Treat it like a job. You may be auditioning for future employment, so be reliable, be helpful, participate, show up. If you can afford it, attend some library conferences. Introduce yourself to the person sitting next to you in each session. Again, you don't have to be annoying. Just introduce yourself and where you're from and ask them a question or two about their library or their position there. Participate in the session discussion. Ask questions of the presenter. Introduce yourself to the presenter afterward. I've presented at a lot of library conferences over the years, and it's always nice to meet people who are interested in the same topics you are. They chose you the presenter, they chose your session, so they must be interested in what you have to say. I always am impressed when a library science student says, hey, I'm in library science school, I just wanted to introduce myself, I'm interested in your topic. Next, do your research on various libraries to find a good fit. Go deep using the tools in the assessment module. What's their annual budget? How many staff do they have? What community events do they participate in? Who are their community partners? What programs are they offering? Do they have interesting collections or services or spaces? What are the community demographics? Who do they serve? What diversity initiatives do they have for staff or patrons? How accessible is their building, their collections, their website? What feels right about this library and what red flags exist? How does the library match your special interests and skills? Where to find library job posts. So I need a library job, linked to it here, INALJ, I need a library job.com. Co-ops and state library job boards, library listservs. Michigan has the MishLibL listserv. They have a ton of library job posts all the time there. LinkedIn has library job posts if you connect to the different organizational sites on LinkedIn, the MLA site, the TLN site, things like that. My next advice is get a proofreader. We get a lot of applicants for every job, and a simple mistake on your resume or a cover letter could be what weeds you out as a candidate. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So make sure you're addressing the correct library, especially if you're applying to several positions at several libraries. Mistakes happen, and that's okay, but I've gotten, cover letters saying I'm applying for the job at the Ann Arbor District Library or wherever. If you're applying to multiple places, double check that you've sent the right letter to the right place. Typos and grammar are very important because it's a writing sample. It's indicative of how well you might communicate with the library staff and its patrons. Be concise. Link your experience and your interest to the job posting, but keep it to a few paragraphs. Too little shows lack of interest. You have to give me something. But too much, if it's page after page, a cover letter can be a page long. A good solid page is great. Couple strong paragraphs. Too much shows lack of respect for the panel's time. Always ask questions in an interview. Come prepared with thoughtful questions about the position and about the library in general. You're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you, and they want to know you are just as interested in that fit. So if all of your questions were answered during the interview, think of some new ones. Ask for more information about a collection or a program or a service that they offer or something they mentioned during the interview that seemed interesting. Ask what they like best about working there. It shows you were listening, that you were paying attention, and you're interested in what they were sharing with you throughout the interview. It's okay to ask logistical questions, like how scheduling works, but the bulk of your questions should be more thoughtful and focused on how the job description matches your goals and how your expertise will further their goals. It's a two-way street. If you saw their strategic plan online, ask about one of the specific goals or objectives that interested you and how you might be involved in that particular thing. It's a good idea to take notes during an interview. Take some time and jot down some keywords before you answer a question. And I mean like 5 or 10 seconds, not several minutes. Keep the conversation rolling. But taking these notes helps you to avoid having to ask for the question to be repeated, especially for multi-part questions. But do ask for the question to be repeated if you need it. Just make sure you're answering the question. But taking a few notes, just a few keywords, it focuses your nerves. Jot down the interviewers' names when they introduce themselves. I personally, as a panelist for filling a job, I find it impressive when people, they're not writing a novel, but they're taking a few notes. They're interested in what we're talking about. When you get to the end and all your questions have been answered, you at least have some keywords to remember, because we understand your nerves get the best of you. But if you have some keywords, you can quickly look back at what you wrote and say, it was interesting when you were talking about this program or this service or this particular thing that this position is responsible for. Can you tell me more about that? And lastly, say thank you. Follow up after the interview and mention something you thought was interesting or particularly positive about the interview. So this is just my experience, but I thought while we're talking about different jobs in the library, let's talk about the job search part of all that. Assessment is both ongoing and annual, and my library managers have regular check-ins with their direct reports. So I have 2 check-ins per month with my director, where we chat for a half hour or so about what's going on in my department. It keeps her up to date. It allows her to share administrative priorities with me so I can implement them within my staff. And it creates a nice communication stream. So I love these check-ins. I enjoy these check-ins immensely. My boss isn't scary or out of reach to me. She's a regular part of my routine. I also hold check-ins with my staff. The librarians have monthly meetings with me where they share what they're working on and they ask for what they need. It keeps me up to date in a non-micromanagey way. It keeps communication constant and open between me and my staff, and it ensures we address things right away. If someone needs support for a project or a personal situation, they can ask for it in a timely manner, which is better for everyone. I can find help, money, time. I can adjust their workload as needed and keep things running smoothly. Ask for feedback regularly. If you aren't being assessed regularly, if your manager doesn't provide feedback, ask for it. Ask for a check-in and come prepared to share with them what you're working on. Ask how your plans and your projects relate to big picture library priorities, or how you could pivot them to connect better to those goals. Follow through on corrective action, retraining, or professional development. If you're asked to focus on learning more about time management or DEI or whatever, just do it. Ask for the resources to improve your skills and your approaches, and be open to the idea that we are always learning and improving. Accept advice with the intent it is being offered with, to help you serve in your job capacity or to grow that capacity. So in conclusion, libraries are organized in different ways depending on their service needs and who they serve. Trustees are responsible for top-level items like advocacy, budget review, and long-range planning. Library directors set priorities and they carry out the board's vision. Library staff serve patrons according to the director's priorities. And library staff should represent the diversity of the communities they serve. Organizational charts visually describe the hierarchy of those who serve the library, and sometimes they show opportunities for movement around for people who want to try new things. Public library job searching requires networking, research, and inquiry to find the best fit. Performance reviews are formal feedback sessions, but assessment should be ongoing and continuous. These are the ideas that were presented in this lecture this week. I hope you have a great week, everybody.